25 students tragically pass away, but one shocking detail at the funeral transforms everything. Emma's heart felt heavy as the words drifted through the air like the pale gray clouds hanging over the town. 25 students taken too soon. She could hardly breathe, the suffocating weight of grief settling on her chest. Only a few yards away, her classmates, each one of them a bright star in their own right, were surrounded by friends and family, sharing stories that echoed through the hall. Emma wanted desperately to be a part of that crowd, to feel something beyond this pain, this isolation. But instead, she stood frozen, swallowed by the overwhelming sense of being invisible. No one will remember me, she thought as she peered into the sea of faces, all so familiar, yet so distant. The pain twisted inside her like a knife. The despair of feeling trapped in her own skin was almost unbearable. Would she always be the girl who felt like a ghost in her own life? Just another shadow behind the dazzling lights of others, athletes, cheerleaders, the popular crowd. The service began, and with each word uttered, Emma felt the tension in her body double. For all their achievements, none of them could speak for her. They had their legacy, but what about hers? What was left behind when you were deemed a gifted but socially awkward outcast? All her dreams felt tainted now, smothered by the tragedy. Just as despair threatened to drown her, she heard a murmur waft across the room. Whispers of Olivia, the golden girl. Could it be true? The same Olivia who Dee somehow seen past all the labels and insisted on meeting with Emma after school? The realization was a jagged rock lodged in her throat. Emma fought back the urge to run. She was on the edge of a revelation, hovering between confusion and clarity. Olivia had been her champion. A hand reached out into the abyss, and she hadn't recognized it until now. The girl who had it all had advocated for girls like her, an act of kindness that felt almost supernatural in its significance. But as this emotion blossomed, heartbreak followed closely behind, pulling Emma deeper into despair. What could have been? That flicker of hope dangled before her, bright yet painfully out of reach. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Emma's hands trembled as she sifted through discarded notes at the memorial flowers and letters piling high. Then she found it, Olivia's unfinished letter to the scholarship committee. Each typed word dripped with hope, dreams waiting to be realized. Emma's breath caught, her mind racing with every line, grappling with all the lost potential of not only Olivia's life, but all the others too. The fire ignited within her, a sinking realization. Their voices had been silenced. What if she could do something? Could she confront the town's silence, its bias against talent obscured by wealth? The weight of the decision loomed, intense and all-consuming. She could rise as Olivia had, challenge the status quo. Yet just as resolve began to pulse through her veins, a loud voice cut through the somber air, disrupting her quest. The call of truth echoed from the back of the church, a challenge too potent to ignore. Emma froze, heart racing in her chest, her thoughts spiraling violently. Would she step up and transform Olivia's dreams into a reality, or would she retreat once more into the endless shadows? The decision wrapped its icy fingers around her neck, and in that charged moment, as she stood on the precipice of both hope and despair, everything hung in the balance. The voice boomed again, shredding the silence that had engulfed the memorial. Speak up, it demanded. We owe it to them to not let their voices die with them. The words pierced through Emma like a striking challenge, igniting something deep within her. As she turned slowly toward the source of the call, her mind began to race with possibilities. Who was the brave soul willing to shatter the veil of grief that cloaked this event? In an act of defiance against her own fears, Emma found her feet moving, edging her way out from the cocoon of shadows she had woven around herself. What was that brave impulse coursing through her veins? Part of her instinctively sought refuge in the comfort of denial, where stillness could protect her from this moment. Yet, the other part, a voice far louder and more insistent, pushed her onwards. It whispered of change, of the possible ripple effect she could create, even if she faltered at first. Could she truly stand up for the lost voices? Let her own echo emerge from the quiet? Emma's heart pounded like a drum, drowning out the funeral music and the soft sobs around her. With every step forward, the weight of her resolve began to lift. She recalled Olivia's letter, the urgency of unfinished dreams, the potential they had whispered together. What would Olivia want? To be remembered, or to inspire another to carry forth the flame that she could no longer hold? A surge of determination rippled through her body, channeling her trepidation into purpose. The voice continued to resonate, ricocheting off the well-worn walls of the church. If we remain silent, we betray their memories. Emma could see the speaker, now another student, someone she recognized but had never spoken to. There was a fierce intensity in their expression, a passion that ignited hope in the hearts of the gathered. Suddenly, the feeling of her isolation shifted, transforming into a sense of shared betrayal rooted in the silence of loss. "Hear me out," Emma shouted, her voice breaking through the grasp of her anxieties. The words spilled out before she could throttle them down. "We shouldn't be here only to mourn, but to lift up their legacies. Who will tell their stories if not us?" The murmur of surprise washed over the assembly as they turned their attention to her. Each set of eyes felt like an invitation, a challenge in itself, compelling her to keep going. Emma's breath quickened, fueled by her desperation to be seen, combined with the need for others to understand the magnitude of their loss. We can't let our fears dictate our strength any longer. At that moment, wave after wave of emotion surged through her, amplifying her sentimental drive to speak out against the injustice. With every uttered word, her voice carried the whispers of the deceased, morphing her grief into a collective yearning for acknowledgement and action. Yet in the back of her mind, doubts began to bubble up, threatening to drown her newfound courage. Was she really equipped for this? Beyond the fear and uncertainty, deep down, a flicker of hope told her this was the moment everything would shift. The room had fallen silent, and the weight of expectation shifted toward her. Emma could feel the surge of responsibility, her heart racing with each beat. But as she prepared to unravel the shrouded potential of the lost souls, a sharp pain of realization bit at her resolve. Could she truly keep their stories alive if she couldn't even validate her own existence? With a shaky breath, she steadied herself. The time for reflection turned into a pivotal reckoning, one not just for Olivia or her fallen classmates, but one where Emma would finally confront her own worth. Would she fulfill the role of the unnoticed protagonist in her own life? The air crackled with tension as Emma stood at the entrance of transformation. Little did she know, a deeper revelation awaited within the shadows, lurking just beyond this pivotal moment. Would she be brave enough to face the ghosts of her own past while rising as a voice for the silenced? Emma's voice hung in the air, a fragile thread woven from grief and determination, holding the space between silence and the urgent need for recognition. As the echo of her words faded, a heavy pause enveloped the room, leaving her acutely aware of the weight of her declaration. Hands trembled at her sides, and she fought against the urge to retreat. Vulnerability sprawled around her like an unwelcome blanket, yet she remained rooted to the spot, a trembling figure at the epicenter of collective sorrow. What if I fail? The thought pierced her resolve. Her mind skittered over her past, every decision that had nurtured her self-doubt, every moment she had stepped back when she should have stepped forward. Those memories clawed at her, feeding the narrative of inadequacy, telling her she was just a spectator in her own life. But then she felt it, a shift, a gentle tug at her insides, murmuring to her that she was more than just the memories of a silent observer. It was as if Olivia's spirit had wrapped itself around her, whispering words of encouragement, urging her to embrace this moment, to channel the pain of loss into something tangible. The warmth of that connection fueled her, fermenting the cracks of doubt into new resolve. With the remnants of her confidence flickering like a flame, she took a breath, feeling the charged air around her quake as if the room itself was poised on the brink of change. "We owe it to them," she continued, her voice firming with each syllable, "to share their stories, to give them life beyond this moment, to fight against the shadows that might erase them from our memory." Those lingering doubts still nagged incessantly, but each word she spoke transformed them into motivations. The specters of loss morphed into fuel for her fire. After all, how could she be silent in the face of death while alive? The other student, Liam, stood watching her closely, eyes alight with determination, seeming to draw strength from her impassioned plea. Was he feeling that too? The recognition that maybe, just maybe, they could become architects of their own narratives together? She locked eyes with him, a silent bond forming in shared purpose, as if sensing the collective heartbeat of a community awakening. Emma took a step forward, prompting Liam to join her. "What we do today matters. Let's use our voices, our actions, to uplift their stories, to defy the silence that claims them." The murmurs around her swelled, morphing into a cautious wave of agreement, an unspoken commitment blossoming among the crowd. But doubt still festered in the corners of her heart, whispering that perhaps this was a fleeting moment of bravery, not the beginning of something lasting. What if she returned to her quiet life, the one dictated by fear and insignificance? The chilling aftermath of emptiness loomed like a ghost at her shoulder, threatening to drown out the courage she had just discovered. The fear sharpened, burning within her. If she were to embrace this new role as a storyteller, an advocate, then what would it mean for her personal journey? Emma closed her eyes briefly, the gravity of choice settling heavily over her shoulders. Each decision from this moment forward would just shape Olivia's legacy. They would carve out her own path. Suddenly, the potential for tomorrow unfolded before her, an unfurling tapestry woven from threads of ambition and expectation. Every heartbeat echoed with urgency, inching her closer to the precipice of decision. In that moment, Emma grappled with the understanding that to carry forth the narratives meant actively choosing to step into her own. She could no longer be just a ghost in someone else's story. A profound determination surged within her, a flicker of defiance against the history of remaining unseen. But as she sensed the fragile connections strengthening among the crowd, a thought niggled at her. What if those stepping forward with her could also be a double-edged sword? What if vulnerability could tear not only at her own spirit, but at the fragile connections she had started to build? Emma's resolve solidified into action. She gathered her courage, but in the back of her mind loomed an impending clash, the question of whether the rise she sought would come at a cost she wasn't prepared to pay. "We need to talk about what they meant to us," she asserted again, directing her words to the crowd, now captivated. With one last, wavering glance at Liam before turning to face the others in the room, she knew the fight had just begun. Would they all be able to sustain this journey together, or would the realities of vulnerability leave them more fragmented than before? The moment hung suspended, as if time itself hesitated in the wake of Emma's affirmation. As the murmurs swelled into a chorus of tentative agreement, a realization dawned upon her. Not only was she here to tell Olivia's story, but she was also on the cusp of unveiling her own hidden narrative. The collective energy in the room felt both electric and suffocating, a reminder that she was no longer alone in her grief or her ambition. Emma's pulse raced as the eyes of her peers turned toward her, each gaze a mirror reflecting her insecurities. With each heartbeat, the question loomed larger. Who was she without Olivia? Would stepping into this new role mean carving out an identity forged in pain and longing? Yet, beneath the weight of uncertainty lay a seed of empowerment. She stood before them, not just as a representative of loss, but as a beacon of potential. The flicker of fear within her began to intertwine with a flicker of hope, urging her towards something greater. Each of us has been touched by tragedy, Emma continued, her voice gaining traction. But we also all have the power to honor their lives through our own actions. The conviction in her tone ignited a palpable shift in the atmosphere, turning whispered hesitations into a silent pact of commitment. Liam stepped closer, his presence anchoring her wavering courage. His unwavering gaze urged her to forge ahead. She could feel her boundaries expanding. The walls she had kept up for so long began to crumble. This wasn't just a moment of catharsis, it was a challenge to engage fully with the pain and the promise of what lay ahead. The vulnerability she had spent years avoiding now felt like a key, unlocking doors she never dared to approach. What if struggle could metamorphose into strength? What if each story shared became a thread, binding them closer together? As she contemplated this, a flicker of realization surged. This was her opportunity to discover her own voice. Yet, the nagging worry lingered. What if the revelations that accompanied this journey were too radical, too raw? The thought of exposing her vulnerabilities terrified her. A ripple of concern washed over her, further questioning whether she could sustain this newfound purpose. Emma dared not acknowledge the fear threatening to hijack her resolve. Instead, she brushed it aside. The murmurs around the room began to coalesce into a chorus of shared experiences. It was a symphony of grief, a raw expression of their pain, intertwined with determination to remember, to create, and to keep the stories alive. Inspired, Emma stepped further into the fray of conversation. Let us pour our emotions onto paper. Let us paint their legacies in our actions. We can collect our stories and meld them into something that can't be forgotten. Immediately, hands shot up as voices sprang forth, eager to contribute. Each speaker added a layer, a fragment of emotion that brought to life the memories they cherished. Emma found herself swept up in the collective passion, deeply aware that her hesitations paled against the weight of shared support. However, as she navigated this new terrain, clarity emerged. What if vulnerability was precisely what they needed? What if opening up about their struggles could be the foundation upon which they built resilience? In recognizing her own fear, she began to see the broader landscape of human connection, the shared experiences that defined and shaped them all. As the final thoughts of the session loomed, Emma felt a shift within herself. Each story she heard only strengthened her belief that they were all interwoven, each a vital thread in a tapestry richer than she had ever imagined. But beneath that empowerment was an unsettling question. Would they together be able to face the depths of their shared vulnerabilities without fracturing? Turning to the group, she took a deep breath. Let us create a space for those stories to flourish. Let us promise to support one another even in the hard moments. Her invitation lingered in the charged atmosphere, a bond forming with every word spoken. Yet, as the dialogue intensified, a haunting thought lingered. What if weaving their narratives together inevitably exposed experiences they were not ready to confront? In championing this newfound purpose, would her own fragility reemerge, unsettling the very connections they sought to build? Emma's heart raced, uncertainty gnawing at her resolve. The journey was far from over. It was only the beginning, and she teetered on the brink of a deeper, more profound discovery. Would the scars of the past strengthen their bond or risk unraveling everything they were trying to build? The energy in the room pulsated with a newfound vitality as Emma's declaration settled among her peers. Yet, she felt the pressure of expectation building within her chest. The earlier notion of camaraderie had morphed into a weight she could hardly bear. To be the vessel of stories, she needed to confront her own. How could she guide others through their vulnerabilities when her own were still festering, unacknowledged and raw? Emma's thoughts raced as the discussions unraveled around her. Each account echoed with the same core emotion loss, but where there was pain, she also discovered commitment and fire. Their bravery was contagious, and it sparked something deep within her. As she listened, a latent voice began to emerge, drowning out her fears with a silent rebellion against the status quo of her silence. Yet, buried beneath her introspection was an acerbic question. What if her own grief was too intense, too overwhelming, and threatened to swallow the light they sought to build together? Determined to make this moment meaningful, Emma raised her hand, a gesture that felt more about claiming her space than seeking acknowledgement. The clarity that followed felt like a revelation. "I want to share my story," she said, her voice trembling but steady. "I always push my grief aside, thinking it would make things easier. I thought I was honoring Olivia's memory by suppressing my emotions. But maybe true honor lies in being honest about our pain, too." A hush fell, punctuated by the collective inhale of her peers, a tangible validation of the courage it took to confront such vulnerability. Emma's heart raced, not just from fear, but from a nascent sense of agency. She took a deep breath and prepared to dive into the deep waters of her emotions. "I thought I could navigate life without dragging my grief behind me. I forced myself day after day to operate on autopilot, wearing a mask. But when Olivia died, it felt as if that mask shattered, exposing the rawness underneath. I've grappled with guilt for considering my pain at all while trying to elevate her memory. Each word felt like a heavy stone cast into murky waters, rippling outwards. The room's energy shifted, her peers leaning into her narrative. Adam, a quiet presence until now, spoke up. "It's easy to think we have to compartmentalize. Isn't it? But having experienced my brother's loss, I realized that holding it in doesn't foster strength. It merely breeds isolation." His admission struck a chord with Emma, underscoring the truth of her own struggles. In that moment, she recognized the gravity of their shared experience. Vulnerability became less of a burden and more of an invitation to grow, to connect. Each person now seemed to embody a piece of their collective grief, no longer separate, but an intricate tapestry woven from heartbreak and hope. But clarity begot a fear that lingered. What would happen when the narratives grew deeper than she anticipated? Would opening those wounds invite chaos or foster the healing she hoped to inspire? The way forward became clouded as darker thoughts edged their way back into her mind. What if bringing their stories to light tempered their strength instead of amplifying it? As the session began to wind down and her peers offered anecdotes of their own, Emma felt dizzy with possibilities. She stood on the precipice of not just an emotional journey, but a path toward deeper self-acceptance. Could she be resilient enough to embrace this new chapter? Could they collectively turn their vulnerabilities into a force for their own renewal? With one last deep breath, she concluded, "Let us commit to leading with our stories, and in doing so, let us not shy away from the darkest corners of our grief. We might just find that healing lives in the light of shared truth." Her words hung in the air, heavy with the promise and the weight of what lay ahead. Yet she trembled at the unforeseen depths they might discover, the uncomfortable truths, the questions they wouldn't have answers for. She prepared to leave the gathering. A gnawing sense of doubt sought to grip her anew. What if leading this charge down the labyrinth of shared truths revealed more than she was ready to face? Emma left the room unsure, yet invigorated. It was a spark of courage crowded by simmering fear, each a battle she knew she needed to confront. The first steps had been taken, but the real fight lay ahead. Within the complexity of intertwined stories, would there be enough strength to confront what lingered in the shadows? The fluorescent lights above flickered intermittently, casting an uneven glow across Emma's workspace. She had returned home after the gathering, yet the weight of the discussions clung to her like a shadow. Thoughts about her own narrative intertwined with those of her peers, their voices echoing in her mind as she tried to focus on the monotonous tasks of the day. Sitting at her cluttered desk, she opened her notebook, revealing pages filled with fragmented thoughts and half-formed ideas. Each page mirrored her restless mind, chaotic yet longing for clarity. Today, She needed to translate raw experience into something more than scribbles. She summoned the courage she had felt in a room earlier and attempted to capture the emotional landscape they had all navigated together on paper. But the pen hesitated. Could she truly lay bare the distress and despair that she had tucked away so neatly? Each word felt like an intrusion into something sacred. The grip of her own grief tightened around her throat, a suffocating reminder that authenticity might demand more than she was willing to give. Emma closed her eyes, letting silence envelop her. The voices of her peers ricocheted in her thoughts, especially Adam's revelation. It forced her to confront the inevitable. Her grief would not simply fade into the background. It demanded acknowledgement. Questions spiraled through her mind. Would voicing her pain make it more real? Would it shatter the fragile sense of control she clung to? Frustrated, she slammed her notebook shut. Perhaps expressing vulnerability through writing was a form of surrender. Yet the deeper she sank into that thought, the more she realized that surrender could also be a pathway to strength. What if by sharing her narrative, she not only reclaimed her voice, but also inspired others to break their silence? Resolved, she flipped open her notebook once more, this time without the weight of expectation. She began to write. Her thoughts flowed liberally, detailing cherished memories with Olivia, the laughter and the shared dreams, yet intertwined with the piercing ache of loss. Emma rediscovered the power of her words as they turned into a bridge to connection, both for herself and others who had suffered. Gradually, she unearthed a lesson from the chaos. Transformation arises not from avoiding pain, but from embracing it. The musings evolved into a conscious decision. She would not just share a story. She would invite others into her ongoing journey towards healing. With each word, darkness began to recede, illuminating the depths she feared she might drown in. Yet still, the shadows lurked. What if her revelations drew unwanted attention? What if her story encouraged others to delve too deeply, unearthing wounds that had not yet healed? With that thought, doubt twisted in her stomach. She briefly glanced at her phone, scrolling through texts from peers wanting to reconvene. Their eagerness stoked her anxieties. Had she stirred the pot too vigorously? They were each grappling with their own weight, and perhaps the tapestry she envisioned needed more time to weave. Emma took a deep breath, her mind buzzing with a newfound resolve. She decided, then, that the next gathering would not merely be about sharing stories, but would include methods of navigating their own vulnerabilities. They could explore the tools to face their emotions and contain the chaos she feared. A flicker of hope ignited in her. The path might be fraught with challenges, but perhaps she could guide them through this journey toward healing. She could not promise easy answers or quick resolutions, but she could facilitate a space for discovery. As the evening wore on, an uncertainty clawed at her. An urgency emerged within. Emma felt the need to prepare. This journey was as much about coalition building as it was about individual reckoning. She needed to arm herself with strategies and insights so they could thrive amidst the tangled stories waiting to be told. The time had come to face not only her own vulnerabilities head-on, but also to create the roadmap that could lead her and others through the maze of shared truths. She stood up, bolstered by clarity. It was time to reach out, to formulate a plan for the next meeting that tapped into the very roots of their experiences, preparing them all for the profound work ahead. And yet, a pressing question loomed. Would they be able to confront the deeper complexities of their grief, or would their stories prove too overwhelming to bear? Determination settled over Emma as she moved into the next day, recharged by her mission. Her notebook had become a lifeline, its pages now filled with ambitious plans for the upcoming gathering. Yet as the daylight streamed through her window, illuminating the clutter, anxiety coiled around her resolve. This time would demand more than just the sharing of stories. It required a thoughtful orchestration of emotions and techniques to steer everyone safely through their vulnerabilities. This shift in strategy ignited a new urgency. Emma's mind raced with ideas, calling forth memories of workshops and discussions she had attended where facilitators navigated emotional landscapes with grace. She leaned into that recollection and began to design a framework. Topics to explore, exercises for grounding, moments to pause. In the middle of drafting her list, something stirred within her stubborn doubt. What if her knowledge was not enough? What if she faltered in front of group? The weight of expectation cracked open her confidence. She felt small beneath it, trapped in her own preparations. What she envisioned as guidance began to feel like an excess burden. Taking a deep breath, she put her pen down. Perhaps the first step shouldn't be to formulate a plan filled with strategies. Instead, she needed to confront an essential truth. She too was still navigating her grief. She could not lead others through the labyrinth if she was merely a guide with a map but no first-hand comprehension of the terrain. This epiphany transformed her approach. Instead of narrowing her focus to tactics, she would share her journey truthfully. Emma realized the vulnerability she had once feared might become her greatest tool. Opening up would allow her peers to witness her struggles and perhaps inspire them to share their own in safe reciprocity. With renewed resolve, she set aside the notebook temporarily and typed a quick message to Adam, the one person who had proven to be a stable anchor during her tumultuous emotional whirlpool. She requested to meet, to share these evolving insights, and to possibly practice how she would facilitate the gathering. Adam's experience would lend credibility to her stance and serve as a crucial sounding board. Minutes turned into hours before she received a reply, and with it, a mix of relief and apprehension washed over her. They arranged to meet later that afternoon at their usual coffee spot, the kind where steaming cups and cozy corners created an atmosphere rich for honesty. As the clock ticked closer to their rendezvous, doubt crept in again. What if Adam dismissed her ideas? What if they didn't resonate with him? As they settled into a corner booth, Emma's heart raced. The aroma of coffee mingled with the anxiety swirling in her stomach. Adam greeted her warmly, but the moment lingered uncertainly in the air until Emma took a deep breath. I want to approach the next gathering differently, she began, the words tumbling out before she could second-guess them. Instead of just sharing our stories, I think we should create a space where we can acknowledge the weight of our grief and explore how to navigate it together. Adam listened, his expression thoughtful as he sipped his coffee. Emma pressed on, detailing her vision of opening up her struggles, hoping that her vulnerability would help establish a sense of safety among the group. Yet just as she reached the crux of her proposal, she noticed an unexpected shift in Adam's posture. Emma, he said slowly, his tone serious. What you're suggesting sounds profound, but are you prepared for that level of honesty, not just for yourself, but for the others as well? You may unearth feelings no one is ready to confront. The weight of his words sank in, pushing against the walls of her confidence. Would her willingness to be vulnerable unravel too much in the process? This truth loomed large in her mind, the reality that she might have just opened a Pandora's box. As they moved into a deeper discussion, Emma realized she needed not just Adam's validation, but also his insight into navigating the murky waters that lay ahead. The relief of sharing her plans was tempered by a dawning clarity. Leading others through their grief was a monumental task, fraught with unforeseen complexities. The depth of self-exploration and the raw emotion involved might be a double-edged sword, and the looming question remained. How prepared was she to face the dark areas of her grief and potentially guide others through their own? Each minute felt heavier with uncertainty as she left the coffee shop, the echoes of their conversation reverberating in her thoughts. Emma resisted the urge to retreat into her mind, determined to break through this latest aura of trepidation. Would embracing this path of openness yield the healing she craved, or would it fracture the fragile connections she sought to nurture? The possibilities felt endless yet perilous, a storm brewing on the horizon of her emotional landscape. As she arrived home, the evening sky draped itself in shadow, mirroring the fears trotting through her mind. Emma knew she had to continue preparing not just for the gathering, but for the unveiling of truths. Would she find the strength to stand firm, even as the ground below her shifted. In that moment of reckoning, the stakes for her and others had never felt higher. Hesitation loomed as Emma sat at her kitchen table, staring into the depths of her untouched planner. The weight of Adam's words echoed relentlessly in her mind. Are you prepared for that level of honesty? The question twisted inside her like a knife, creating a knot of uncertainty she struggled to untangle. Her vision was clear, a bright line leading through darkness, but the deeper she ventured into it, the more intangible it felt. Finding the courage to open her wounds to others was daunting. Emma felt as if she stood on the precipice of a cliff, questioning whether the leap would lead to healing or deeper despair. It was in this vulnerable state that a faint flicker of determination ignited within her. She had to confront her own grief if she was to lead others from their own. Gathering her thoughts, she breathed deeply and began to write again, this time crafting a personal narrative that would serve as the foundation for an honest dialogue. Each stroke of the pen became cathartic, peeling layers away as she relayed her journey, her confusion, her moments of overwhelming sadness. The process was not just an internal struggle. It was also a commitment to not shy away from discomfort. Emma documented her doubts alongside her insights. She examined the quiet moments of her healing, grappling with the loneliness of grief, the twinges of guilt about moving forward while cherished memories remained present, and the realization that vulnerability was not a sign of weakness, but rather a bridge to connection. Pacing through her living room, Emma wrestled with the idea of sharing this narrative aloud. What if it exposed her too much? Scared her peers away? But what resonated was the recognition that she could be a lighthouse guiding others through the storm. Could she be the beacon of hope, shining through the fog with an invitation for others to step closer, to journey with her? Emma sought stability amid her swirling emotions. She reached for her phone and turned to Adam once more, proposing a follow-up discussion. Let us plan a practice session, just the two of us. I want to try out how I would present this, she typed, her fingers trembling slightly. The response was swift and supportive, an anchor amid her turbulent thoughts. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emma set up her living space, prepared to share her insights, fears, and roadmap for their shared vulnerability. She felt a strange mix of anticipation and dread. Would Adam's insights offer the clarity she needed or shatter the fragile ground she had begun to lay? The doorbell rang, and with a racing heart, she opened it to find Adam holding 2 coffees, his familiar smile bringing a sense of calm. "Ready?" he asked, as they settled down with their drinks. Dressed casually, he was the embodiment of comfort, yet she could see the reflective seriousness in his eyes, ready to delve deeper into the topic from their previous conversation. Emma began by sharing her narrative, her pulse racing as she traded the warmth of a shared cup for the chill of vulnerability. "I want to create an environment where we can confront our deepest fears about loss," she articulated, maintaining eye contact with Adam, seeking validation. He nodded, encouraging yet contemplative. "That's a good start. But have you thought about the potential backlash, what it might look like when emotions run high, when pain resurfaces?" Her voice trembled slightly, but resonated with determination. "I accept that it might trigger something, but it's in that raw honesty that healing can begin for all of us." The conversation unfolded intricately, weaving through the complexities of emotional exposure, mutual support, and the necessity of creating boundaries. With every question Adam posed, Emma's confidence solidified. She found her footing within the discomfort. They role-played potential scenarios, tweaking her phrasing here and there, injecting levity where needed. In what felt like a dance between 2 supportive souls, Emma transitioned from anxious to assertive. As the hours slipped by, Emma was stunned by how her vision transformed through each exchange, surfacing hidden perspectives, confronting the assumption that her grief was a solitary endeavor. By the night's end, Emma felt different, empowered, and honest, yet still apprehensive. "I think I can do this," she told Adam, her heart fluttered with newfound resolve. But just as she celebrated this breakthrough, a new thought collided into her consciousness. Would sharing her journey expose the very wounds she sought to heal? Preparing to lead others through the resonant depths of collective sorrow brought an unease that shifted the ground beneath her once more. Was she ready to not only withstand the storm, but to invite others into its very eye, where true understanding lay? As she stepped toward her window, watching the city lights flicker in the darkness, Emma knew she was at the edge of something significant. The coming days promised the challenge of unearthing her grief and guiding others to do the same. But would the journey unlock insights that remained hidden in shadows, or would it reveal vulnerabilities too raw to share? In that quiet moment of anticipation, Emma realized the significance of the venture ahead. The path to reclamation was being laid, one deliberate step at a time. But how far would she have to walk into the unknown to find not only herself, but also a community of shared resilience? As the first light of dawn broke through her bedroom window, Emma rose with a newfound determination that coursed through her veins. Overnight, her internal shift crystallized. This was more than just a personal journey. It was a call to the wider world. The flickering lights she had observed the previous night symbolized fragmented lives, many like hers yearning for clarity amidst chaos. Emma set her mind toward preparation. She recalled Adam's earlier question about potential backlash, and for the first time, it didn't weigh down her thoughts. Instead, it propelled her forward. Embracing discomfort now became a mantra, an inextricable part of her narrative that she was ready to share. Her desk, the untouched planner from yesterday, metamorphosed into a canvas of possibilities. With each bullet point, she scribbled, introduce own story, highlight common grief experiences, facilitate guided conversations. The structure of her presentation solidified. Unraveling her vision on paper felt empowering. It was like giving life a new texture, one she could shape and mold. Yet, beneath the excitement, a subtle apprehension lingered. She glanced at her phone and circled Adam's name, contemplating texting him about further practice sessions. Would he be able to sense the urgency driving her? Would he encourage her push toward authenticity or reignite her doubts? Before her thoughts could spiral, determination solidified into action. Emma sent the message, "I'd like to meet again. I want to finalize our approach. I'm ready to dig deeper." The immediate notification popping up on her screen was a bomb. "Absolutely. When are you free?" Adam responded. Arranging their next discussion for the following weekend, Emma turned her focus inward again. Days unfolded into a rhythm centered around her mission. Every morning began with revisiting her narrative, morphing it into stories that could inspire action, that could invite others not just to listen, but to share their own experiences. But midweek brought unexpected turbulence. She received an email from the community center, notifying her of a potential conflict with the grief workshop's timing, which was now set parallel to another major event. Anxiety gripped her. There was a sinking realization in her gut. If she wanted to make an impact, she would have to fight for it. Her mind whirled with possibilities as she paced her living room, fingers dancing over her phone to summon Adam. "We might need to change the schedule. I can handle this, but I will have to be firm." The reply was again supportive, reassuring her of her capability to stand up against uncertainties. "Let's brainstorm ways to make this work," he wrote back. Days later, standing in front of a mirror, Emma practiced her delivery with raw intensity. Each word she spoke echoed back to her. She could feel the power they held. It was in this act of self-reinforcement that she unearthed a hidden competency. She had long overlooked, a natural ability to convey emotion with clarity. In those rehearsals, she also confronted her lingering fear of emotional exposure. The reflections staring back seemed different each time. The tremor in her voice lessened, transforming into a resonance that anticipated understanding and camaraderie. By the time Adam visited again for their final rehearsal, she felt a newfound strength surging through her. "This is about authenticity," she declared confidently, "and my story is just the beginning." As they did their last round of tweaks, Emma sensed her hesitations melting into a commitment to embrace the full spectrum of emotions. Yet as the moment approached for her to unveil her narrative to others, an unsettling thought crept in. What if her authenticity was misinterpreted? The fear of vulnerability's repercussions that had driven her initially began to cloud her mind. What if she could not control the narrative once presented to the world? Standing on the brink of this promising opportunity, Emma was acutely aware of the potential that lay before her. The threshold into this new chapter where sharing met. Risking everything held both great promise and equally daunting fear. As she closed her eyes, taking a moment to breathe deeply and embrace the turmoil within, one undeniable truth surfaced. She was teetering on the edge of self-discovery, a discovery that could either solidify her path or shatter her resolve. Was she genuinely prepared to step beyond her fears and claim the vulnerability that awaited her? With every heartbeat echoing her determination, Emma realized her next move was not just about leading others, but about fully owning her own story. Where would this journey truly lead her? Emma stood before the gathering with her heart pounding. A few days had passed since she announced her intention to create a safe space for sharing their grief, but the echo of her fears still lingered. What if the revelation of her own struggles caused more harm than good? Yet as she glanced around the room, she felt a palpable shift in the air. Each face reflected understanding and an eagerness to connect. In that moment, Emma recognized the growth she had undergone. No longer was she the ghost flitting around the edges of existence, unnoticed and uncelebrated. She had transformed into a catalyst for change, a guiding light standing firmly in the realm of authenticity. The stark contrast between her isolated past and her vibrant present was undeniable. She had stepped into her power. Today is not just about grief, she began, her voice steady and clear. Today, we lift our fallen friends in celebration and commit to carving out our own paths forward. We each carry fragments of their stories, and in sharing our experiences, we can dismantle the silence that surrounds us. Emma looked directly at Adam, her unwavering support, who nodded with encouraging familiarity, silently affirming her resolve. With each word, the tension within her began to dissipate. For the first time, she felt the weight of her fears transform into a buoyant clarity. AS voices blended into a harmonious chorus of shared memories. Emma's own narrative flowed. She recounted the days leading up to Olivia's passing, the guilt of feeling alive when others were not, and her journey to confront the lurking shadows of grief. This was more than an admission. It was an act of reclamation. With every sentence, she shattered the invisible barriers that had held her captive for so long. Vulnerability is not weakness, Emma said, exhaling as if releasing years of pent-up anxiety. It's where our strength lies. I stand before you, not just to share my pain, but to open the door for each of you to step out of the shadows and into your light. As she spoke, tangible shifts occurred within the room. Heads nodded in agreement. Eyes glimmered with understanding. What had begun as a chore of emotional labor transformed into an empowering rite of shared remembrance. Emma felt her own burdens lift. She was no longer the only one carrying this weight. After her presentation, the atmosphere blossomed with open dialogue. Peers shared their stories, revealing personal struggles that coincided with Emma's. A chain reaction of vulnerability unraveled, illuminating connections deeper than they had ever aspired to reach. Friendship grew amidst grief, transforming isolation into camaraderie. Emma took a deep breath, looking around her at the community they were forging. It wasn't just about Olivia or the other law students anymore. It was about life and legacy. It was about triumph over trauma. Each story echoed with undeniable strength, a testament to their resilience. Then came the moment of validation. As the gathering shifted toward advice and coping strategies, a classmate approached Emma with heartfelt gratitude. I always thought I had to deal with my pain alone, but now I see there's a way to heal together. Thank you for being brave enough to share. Her heart swelled. This was the recognition she had longed for, an acceptance of her place not just within her own narrative, but within the larger spectrum of life. Stepping away from the podium, Emma felt something shift within her, a profound sense of achievement and recognition deeply rooted in her standing as both an individual and part of the community. The spark that lit this new path was not only her own clarity, but the shared promise of a brighter future together with her peers. Later that evening, Emma found herself reflecting on her journey. She had conquered the fear of invisibility. She was seen, acknowledged, and celebrated. She had proven to herself and others that vulnerability could be a bridge to deeper connections. In that moment, she understood the significance of her evolution. She had transitioned from a shadow into a leader, from insecurity to solid confidence. Emma had accomplished her goal, to evoke healing, solidarity, and awareness among her peers while honoring those who were lost. As she closed her eyes, a smile stretched across her face. She had achieved a milestone not just for herself, but for everyone who had a story waiting to be told. Emma embraced her new identity fully and without reservation, radiating with the undeniable truth that she had finally found her voice. This was only the beginning of a transformative journey, one she was ready to fully embrace, fueled by the knowledge that recognizing her own worth was an essential cornerstone of growth. Emma was home, not just in her own skin, but within a shared legacy of resilience and courage. Now, this is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others discover this journey. Comment below your reactions and theories about the ending it matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second.